Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam, Caplan. It is our midweek mashup on Inside the Birds, presented, of course, by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. But this is not a normal midweek mashup. There has just been so much going on with the Eagles in the last 24 hours. We have transactions, we've got injuries, we've got a little bit of a look ahead to this blazing Miami Dolphins, and then a recap of what happened against the Jets, the first loss. So it's kind of a whirlwind. It's going to be a very exciting podcast, and we've got a lot of intel to share. Adam, the first thing that really strikes me as we sort of pick up the pieces from the last time we did a podcast, which was the post-game show, is that unsurprisingly, after the first loss of the season, there's a whole lot of fire this guy, fire that guy, the play calling stinks, this guy. I mean, my gosh, if they had just not thrown the interception and won that game, people probably would be like, yeah, that was kind of an ugly win, but I don't think you would have the invective that we have, but we saw this last year. It happens.
People were complaining about Brian Johnson before this past game. Yeah, well, we know pass run ratio. Growing up here, man, it's been going on for over 30 years, so I get it, particularly when Andy Reid was here. When Joe Banner came in, Joe's been on our show before. He's explained in great detail why you should throw way more than you run, because the data shows you it's irrefutable. Mm-hmm. He showed it to me when we worked at ESPN. I stopped arguing with him over it. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Right.
Though I would argue the third and 9 was ridiculous when the Jets don't have any timeouts. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everything is situational, and of course, you want to have the personnel to be able to pass the ball a lot. I wouldn't advocate for 65% passing if you had a bad offensive line and quarterback.
Right. Well, my argument was with McNabb, and this is the one that I just cannot understand. And Andy Reid, I actually asked Andy this at one of his press conferences. I don't know what year it was, but it was when McNabb's accuracy really was waning, and he goes, he's like a pitcher in baseball. You've got to keep pitching. And it just drove me up a wall. Got to keep throwing. I'm like, correct the mechanics first of all. And he's so inaccurate. You have a run game to turn to. That was my argument against it. I get all the data. That's fine. And generally it's correct. But when your quarterback is struggling mightily with accuracy, there's another way to score, to move the football. With Brian Westbrook, it was after Deuce Staley left. It was more after when it was B West and Buckholder and maybe others. Mm-hmm. But, look, the numbers show you could throw and win, obviously. And this game was obvious. You got to come and throw them because the Jets are down. They're the top 4 outside corners. You absolutely should throw.
Yeah.
But, there's other ways to go.
I want to bring to light 3 important stats and then just ask a question to the people who are just furious right now and especially believe that play calling has been an issue, play design. The Eagles are number 2 in the NFL in total yards per game at 395 yards per game. They're 5th in scoring at 26 points per game. They are number 2 in average time of possession at 34 minutes. So, I mean, those are 3 really big. Oh, and by the way, they're the number 1 third down offense in the league. Number 1. So what do we always talk about? Third down in red zone, third down in red zone. Have they struggled in the red zone? There's no doubt about it. That's the only category where you don't find them in the top 10. So my question would be to people who are really like up in arms, and this is probably a small but loud faction, is how much better do you think the Eagles could be offensively when they are 2nd in the league in yards and 5th in the league in points? Could they be the Miami Dolphins? Sure. Are the Miami Dolphins going to be averaging 38 points per game by the end of the year? That remains to be seen. But my point is, people went from this is okay to a disaster pretty quickly, but the statistics tell you they just had a bad game like they did against Washington, and they turned the ball over. I watched some All-22. There are people open. We'll get into Jalen Hurts a little bit. I mean, Greg Costello's been saying it. Jason Avant said it. Quentin Michael said it on Q&A. Like, there are times where he's trying to go for the bigger play instead of the more open guy.
So true.
So to me, that's
true.
Yeah, that's not on play calling and play design. I'm not telling you these things can't improve or be better, but my point is, where's the capacity to get that much better if you're already top 5 and number 1 and 2 in major categories?
In terms of play calling, you mean?
Yeah, like what? My point is, if people want better play calling, what? So that the Eagles could jump up 2 more points a game, or go from 2 to 1 in yards per game, or I mean, they're already number 1 in third down. That's the most important offensive stat in football. Like I just think that people are a little bit overreactive because it doesn't look the way it looked last year.
He's definitely missing throws. It hurts his. And
100%.
you look at the last two games. The Rams game, they left plays on the field. We all knew that. We said this last week. Everyone who does shows for us or works with us said that in the Rams game. They should have scored. John DiFilippo, who is with us from Patreon, John said they left some plays on the field. I mean, he as much as he loved how aggressive they were, they should have scored more. This game, they only scored 14 points. They got up. The fact that they didn't score in the second half is mind-boggling. And by the way, it wasn't as though they got ball control. They still actually, you know how great they've been in time possession every game. They still technically got them by about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Got the Jets. Yeah, I think it's fair. I hear you with Brian Johnson. The pre-snap motion, we're not going to win that argument. I disagree vehemently with the head coach on this one. I'm not saying you have to be in top 10 in pre-snap, and maybe Hurts doesn't like it. I know that Peyton Manning hated it, did not want it. He wanted Reggie Wayne on one side, Marvin Harris on the other. He didn't want them to move. That was it. Okay. Some guys want to get a clean look. There's nothing wrong with that. But unless Hurts is vehemently against it, why can't you do a little bit more?
Great point.
You know,
good point. And to your point, if everybody should hear Q&A this week. I think they did an excellent job on two specific things. Quentin Michael and Jason Avant Q&A pod on Inside the Birds. One, they did an excellent breakdown of that last interception that Jalen Hurts threw, how it happened, and why it could be illustrative of things that happened in the past. You recall Tampa Bay week 3, he threw into the teeth of a cover 2, which was almost an unbelievable throw for Jalen Hurts, who's so careful with the football, to make that kind of error in judgment. And this was sort of a similar error in judgment that the guys sort of believe he was set up into doing, almost baited into throwing, which even Tony Adams said in the post-game Jets locker room that they felt that they would get. So that they did a great job of explaining that, and a great job of also, to your point, Adam, talking about formationally, how there are certain formations that they feel have not been advantageous for the quarterback. They're either giving away tells to the defense, or the defense is adjusting in both the pass and the run. So I would encourage everybody to listen to that, check it out, become educated, because he did a fantastic job with it. And then on that note, you know, our last conversation on Patreon with John DiFilippo, we talked extensively about pass run ratio, why you do certain things within the game, why a team might abandon the run, why a team might go back to a run. So some of that was applicable to what we saw against the Jets. And then we're going to talk to John DiFilippo again this week to break down that Jets game. He'll give us even more insight for our Patreon members, and then preview this. I can't wait to hear what he says about the Miami Dolphins and their offense as well. So it's going to be great. Patreon.com/Inside the Birds. You are getting so much more educated when you listen to Coach DiFilippo.
We really appreciate the comments that we've gotten. I mean, everyone feels educated. They feel like they're better fans. It's why we asked John to do it. And John is like, in fact, one more thing before we move on. John was gracious enough to take questions from our members on Patreon, and we're going to do it again. He agreed to do it again, so we're going to do it again this week. And we'll put that link up for you later today. Today's Wednesday. But look, here's one thing I do want to mention about Hurts, and people are criticizing Hurts, and some of it is so over the top wrong and just ridiculous. I get it. He didn't have a great game. Not every interception was on him. Okay, there were 3 interceptions. One is clearly on him, the last one. But this is one thing that you and I have learned from talking to coaches over the years, particularly quarterback coaches. You never want to take away a guy's aggressiveness. It's what made him make that big jump from 21, where they weren't sure if he's going to be their guy, to 22, where they know he's their guy. He's super aggressive throwing it. That's what you want. But he's got to get squared up correctly. Mechanics could be a little bit cleaner. We're going to ask DiFilippo about that this week, because John's the master at the mechanics, man. What he did with Wentz, of course, Wentz went south after John coached him, as we know. There's just something about the way that when Hurts gets squared up, man, he drives the football downfield. It's pretty special.
Right.
I don't think he's looked as clean. We've talked about forcing the football sometimes when he could take the other passes, and we're going to get into that. There are a couple of positives coming out of the game. People don't want to talk about it, but we're going to talk about that today. There's definitely some positives.
We will. Speaking of another great positive, and at the right time, Gun on One this week. It comes out today at noon. Derek Gunn interviewing Mike Quick, and Mike Quick is a perfect time because, you know, obviously we'll get into Eagles signing Julio Jones. Mike Quick talked about that, about AJ Brown, who last year broke Mike's record of single season receiving leaders Mike had some really interesting things to say about that. And of course, with Tyreek Hill coming
Huh.
in this week with the Dolphins, it was just Mike is the. I don't know if people ever get a chance to talk to Mike Quick outside of hearing him on with Merrill. Just like the smoothest, coolest dude in the world. Like so down to earth, a superstar who doesn't act like one. Just very appreciative of Mike Quick. And he's a big fan of Inside the Birds, as he's told us. So appreciate that he came on with Gunner and did a great interview. Everybody should really listen to it because he also discussed, Adam, educationally, the fine art of what makes good receivers, the late hands, the play strength, the things that you're seeing from Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Maybe not so much against the Jets with Devontae Smith, but mostly other games. Mike
Yeah.
does a great job of explaining it from his vantage point. So that'll be out today. And our pregame show. So here's a cool thing. Our pregame show on Sunday is going to start at 5:00 p.m. As most of our watchers know, we've been doing it virtually, but this one is going to be at a new spot. It's going to be at Fringe Bar on Columbus Ave, Delaware Ave, Columbus Ave. You know, it's the same thing. 140 Columbus Ave is the actual address of it. It's Delaware Waterfront's most exciting new restaurant and event space. It specializes in a soulful pub cuisine inspired by the chef's culinary roots. It's got bold Caribbean flavors like jerk chicken wings and tostones that share a menu with classic pub fare like the Fringe Burger and fish and chips. So they've got a very creative menu, handcrafted draft cocktails, a stellar selection of local beers. It's the perfect place for a date night or a late evening, but it's also a great place to watch Inside the Birds pregame live and get ready for the Eagles game. So again, 140 North Columbus Boulevard. We'll be there. Me, Adam, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant, 5 p.m. doing our thing at the Fringe Bar, live and in person. There'll be drink specials, great food, beer garden.
Nice.
They have a 250 seat big screen theater, Adam. So they're really kind of
Nice.
getting themselves souped up for football. It's not just a
Love
place
it.
to go have a beer. And I'm excited for us to be able to, be back at a venue and have that crowd and everything. It'll be really cool. And one last thing, I mentioned the specials, right? So while we're doing our show, if you go to Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Boulevard, half price wings, $4 draft beers, and an Eagle themed cocktail featuring their new partner, Blue Coat Gin. All right. All Blue Coat drinks are going to be $8 during the entire game day. And of course, you can support the Phillies by enjoying Fringe Bar's Red October cocktail. So there's going to be a ton of great stuff. 5:00, get there earlier. Get yourself. Well, you should tailgate for our pregame show so that by the time we start our show, you're all ready and feeling good. And if you want to ask us some questions during the show, we can probably answer them. So I look forward to being there.
Oh, I can't wait. Cannot wait. And it's on Delaware Ave. I know exactly where it is. So it's easy access to get to. And what a game to do it, man. Sunday night football, Dolphins coming in here. Can't wait. We've been waiting for this game all season. Oh, man. I know Eagle fans are concerned because of the injuries, but see, that's the thing. As we talk Wednesday morning, we're not totally sure who's going to be available.
This is a tough midweek matchup to do just for that reason alone.
Yeah, I mean, this show is usually just about, we update the injury picture, which we're going to do, and we update transactions, which we're going to do. And there's a lot going on with this football team. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, okay, we got a lot to get to.
We do. And one last note, you are doing your Discord chat with our Patreon members tonight at 8:00, correct?
Yeah.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, it's funny. This is not what look, we'll get it to the workouts. We knew they were on the veteran receiver group to sign a depth guy. This is what Julio Jones is, but I'm still waiting patiently for a safety or a corner or two. I mean, what is going on, man?
Well, we shall see. They definitely did sign some guys to the defensive backfield, so we'll see what that's all about. Let's get into the transaction. So you mentioned Julio Jones. It's funny. I give a lot of credit to our analytics expert who's been doing a lot of work for us, Sam Finkel. I don't know if you remember, but back in March, he wrote a data-driven things based on length of contract, talent level, money that you would have to pay Julio Jones, making an argument of why Julio Jones would be a good signing for the Eagles as a depth piece, as a number 3 and number 4 over even a guy like Quez Watkins. And here we are all these months later, and Julio Jones is now signed with the Eagles. Now it sounds like it's a practice squad deal, but he's probably going to be on the 53 pretty soon.
Oh yeah. The question is, they have to take a look at him. They did. So here's the deal. They worked out 2 receivers on Monday, Desmond Patton, a former 6th rounder of the Colts in 2022. Obviously Sirianni would know. Marquez Callaway, who ironically worked out for the Colts on Tuesday. He worked out for the Eagles on Monday. We're told they're not going in the direction of either guy right now. Obviously, that could change. And then Julio on Tuesday, the only player they worked out was Julio Jones, which is kind of like Bradley Roby. This is probably going to happen coming in. They kind of knew this was going to happen, but they had to work him out first to see what kind of shape he's in, because he hasn't been with the team since last year with Bucks. So that's kind of where they are now. So he goes to the practice squad. They absolutely needed depth at receiver. I mean, they had to do something with Quez Watkins on IR. He's got to serve 3 more games on there. Remember, it's 4 games that you have to miss at a minimum. They did move Devin Allen up, right? I think last week.
Yeah.
So he reverted back to the practice squad. Allen's obviously an inexperienced guy. Joe Ngata is on the practice squad, and Greg Ward's only a slot. So Julio Jones can play. He's really an outside receiver who you could reduce and play him inside. So we're going to have some information from a coaching sources worked with him before, who's given us some awesome stuff on Julio over the last, I don't know, it's a couple hours here, last 24 hours. And so we'll have that for you a little bit on Friday and then a ton of it on Sunday. And it's with Julio, it's just, you got to see where he's at in his career. I kind of liken it for those of you who grew up in this area. You might remember, although of course this team's way better than the team that Art Monk signed with the Eagles many years ago. But several decades ago, the Eagles were on this in the mid '90s in a Rich Kotite. I think it was Kotite. Others can correct me. They kept bringing in these guys. Mark Bavaro, but Bavaro was here for a while. But they were bringing in players clearly at the end of their careers, guys who were really gifted. Keith Millard, you might remember for you old timers, and then Art Monk out of the blue, they brought him in. I don't even know if it's for the full season, but here it's an absolute need. They need a veteran. It's not like they need Julio Jones, knock on wood, to play more than 20 snaps a game. But the red zone offense has been so disappointing. You know, you mentioned top of the show how great their down offenses, and that's super important as well. But man, I cannot believe how disappointing this red zone offense is. And here's a guy who's been there and done it. In fact, he almost got them in 2017. Let's not forget.
Oh boy, man! If Goblin, he tripped on the play and then somehow got to his feet and still got there. And man, I can see that replaying in my mind over and over and over again. But yeah, you know, I think I don't see like necessarily a downside to the signing. They needed a wide receiver. They needed depth. He has had some of the most tremendous years ever by an NFL wide receiver, but he's a long way removed from that. And the only thing I would say is that the Titans were hoping for something from him in 2021. He only played 10 games. The Bucks were hoping that he would help revive their offense last year, which was dormant. He played 10 games, 299 yards. He had the lowest yards per catch of his career at 12.5. I'm not pinning all that on him. The whole offense last year was terrible for the Bucks. But again, that's two straight years where a team, and if you really go back to his last year in Atlanta, he only played 9 games. So he's struggled with the foot injuries. I know they're not asking him to be a starter. Like I said, there's not much downside. I just don't know how much upside there is. But again, all you needed was some depth here.
You need anywhere from 12 to 20 snaps a game. That's whenever he gets off the practice spot, which could be soon as this week. It's Brown, it's Smith, it's Zacchaeus now. It's at 3. They don't have 4 or 5 right now, and they need. I mean, this is kind of like you're saying, it's kind of needed. I mean, they need to do something. And here's a guy who's been there, done it before. He's clearly at the end of his career. Hamstring, lots of lower body injuries, specifically with soft tissue. We know how good the Eagles are historically of getting these guys to play with this stuff. So we'll see what happens. But I love it. I thought that was a very interesting signing. And I know obviously he and AJ Brown are close from the days with the Titans, and they've known each other for a long time. So we'll see how it works out. I'm still kind of stunned though that they have not really done anything in the backfield in second.
Well, wait a minute. Let's get to our next item. You don't believe that the bringing back of Josiah Scott is some kind of major tourniquet to this defensive backfield?
But here's the crazy thing. So I had to check into this to make sure it was right, because I've never seen this before. They signed him off the Steelers practice squad he had the injury designation on the practice squad. He's practice squad / injured.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know you can do that. I mean, it's kind of like signing. So I know that they're technically half free agent. We haven't really talked about this much in our 6 years, but when you're on a practice squad, you're termed a half a free agent. In fact, you could actually, and it rarely happens, but you can visit another team while you're on another team's practice squad.
Right.
but they obviously think he's healthy enough. And that's what they did. Yeah, that's very interesting. Now when the Eagles made that trade with Jacksonville, he was looked at initially, as we reported at the time, as a inside and outside corner. Within weeks, they moved him strictly to inside. He could play special teams. He was a backup slot, and then once he got thrown to the fire, it just didn't work. He didn't look good. But here's the thing: A, he must be healthy, or they would have brought him in, and B, they're in such dire straits right now. He knows the defense. Why he was with them in the preseason. So people I know I saw the comments out there. People are over the top of this. They don't have a choice. They have to bring someone in, like the Bradley Roby thing. And by the way, he's hurt with a shoulder injury. We'll get to the injuries in a minute. But how often are you going to bring a guy in here? He's new to your team. 3 days later, you bring up the practice squad, and he does well the first game. It's just, you can't depend on that.
Yeah, so, I know. It's really like the slot for the Eagle is like, it's like a big jinx. I mean, Avonte Maddox plays, he gets hurt. Bradley Roby comes in to save the day, he gets hurt. James Bradbury's asked to play it. He doesn't know how to play the slot. I always thought it was going to be good for him because I thought he would eventually become a slot corner, but he's not played it yet, so it didn't work out. It's just like one jigsaw puzzle after another of trying to figure out who's going to be the slot. I know people are going to say, "Oh man, I have seen way too much of Josiah Scott. This is the guy they picked on." Like, you can't have a Pro Bowl or All Pro player at every single position. And this guy at least knows the defense. If he's healthy, I guess he's healthy, he can play. It's better than, as you just mentioned, trying to sign another new body who has no familiarity with the team or the scheme and hoping that they could just step in and give you the production. I mean, again, I expect that the Dolphins will have to go after him if he's on the field, but I do think it could be worse if you were trying to shoehorn somebody in there who's never even been with the team or the scheme before.
Yeah, they don't, because remember, technically Eli Ricks played a little bit inside against the Rams. That ended in about 5 snaps. He's hurt now, by the way. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sidney Brown, he can do it, but he's not he's played because of where he was aligned in college of Illinois, technically sometimes inside, but he wasn't your natural slot corner.
Right.
They need one. Now, the trade deadline is 13 days away. They got to do something. I don't know what they have to trade away other than future draft picks, which I know they don't want to do. They have the big bank next year. We're waiting for this. But this can't continue. If you want to be a championship team, if we know this front office well, we know they're trying, and they've got 13 days to pull something off. It doesn't have to be a major trade. I mean, there are guys out there. The kid, I know he's available. I just don't know what I don't know. I wrote about them for Pro Football Network. But Darnay Holmes is a really good player. He lost the slot job, but he's very physical. He's had a lot of penalties. I know that's a problem for some people, but he's a good football player.
He is.
He's buried on their bench. So, hey, look, we're just spitballing here a little bit, but
you think the Giants would ever trade someone like that to the Eagles?
Hang on though. That's where I'm going here. Remember, and this stunned me, and I remember talking to Lions about this, why they did it. The Lions traded Hawkinson to the Vikings, the same division.
Good point. I don't like to take other teams that don't necessarily have a history of making good moves and use that as an example of why another team would do it, but it's happened. That's a fair point. It's happened. I mean, I guess if you're the Giants, you figure, yes, I'm helping them, but I'm get something in return. So maybe I get like a low draft pick. I don't know. I just don't know if I'm the Giants. My fans are already breathing down my neck. We're having a terrible year. Last thing I want to do is trade a guy in the division,
I hear you on that, because trading to a division rival is great and they stink, but at least they do right now. The problem is, man, to not play this guy who's talented. I get it. He's had a ton of penalties. For someone who's watched his tape told me he's very aggressive. And which again, I'm not grading this tape, but the guy I spoke with said he's overly aggressive. So maybe go somewhere else where you could coach that out of him. Yeah. By the way, J.C. Horn unfortunately has been hurt. That was an issue for him in college. He had some technique penalties because he was overly aggressive. But anyway, I'm just looking at potential slot corners because they have to do something.
Yeah.
And who knows when Maddox can come back? Is Maddox going to be back for the playoffs? Who knows?
Yeah. And by the way, and a bigger point is that remember that Josiah Scott is a versatile defensive back who at one point in training camp last year was actually practicing and made the team as a fourth safety. People
Oh,
forget
okay.
that. It wasn't until
Yeah,
Maddox got hurt that he went back to
yeah.
nickel, because your safety in this defense also plays a lot of nickel. And if Bradley Roby winds up being able to play, right, if his shoulders winds up improving, they may need a safety, because as we'll get into the injuries,
Oh, they
Reed
do.
Blankenship is hurt. So
May
yeah, they
dude,
definitely need a safety, right?
they need honestly, they need two corners, a slot and a veteran backup corner, outside corner. Okay. And then they need two safeties. This safety issue is insane. The bad luck they've had with injuries.
Right. So what do you make as we finish off the transactions? I thought they traded running backs here on the practice squad, releasing Bryant Koback and signing 2023 seventh round pick of the Packers, Lou Nichols,
Yeah.
to the practice squad.
Size matters. He's got size. He's 215, 220 range. Okay. I mean, it's not like they're going to bring him up this year, but although I say that, boy, do they could use a back with size. Boy, Trey Sermon would have worked well here. Because, man, there's, I don't know what the hell, we talked to DeFlippo about this last week, and John, I don't remember exactly what John said on our Patreon, but the Eagles do not run well in the red zone. It's another reason why the red zone offense is not good. What they need, a banger right inside. I know Boston Scott's been good converting last year. He was around the 3-yard line, 2-yard line. That's great. But from 20 to the goal line, someone who can hit up in there who's physical, I don't know. It's just something missing with this running game inside as great as Swift has been. That's not his game.
Right.
Well, they got to find it.
Lou Nichols. I think I have an uncle named Lou Nichols somewhere
What
in
a
the family.
name.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. Did you go to his bar mitzvah, Adam?
No.
All right. Let's talk about some other injuries. So Quez Watkins is now on IR. We talked about this last week on Friday, saying that the Eagles may not have to make a corresponding, like a released player, if Nakobe Dean gets active, because it's not looking good for Quez Watkins. Of course, he goes on IR, the latest. So he's got to miss at least 3 more games.
Yep.
Hence, the Eagles get Julio Jones. And then, of course, Olamide Zaccheaus will continue to play the slot. Now, this is interesting. Olamide Zaccheaus has a chance here over the next 3 games, if he plays well, to probably keep that slot job, because Quez just was not, I mean, he was banged up, but he also wasn't very productive in that role.
Yeah, with Quez Watkins, again, we've never talking about this for a year. He's not a natural slot. He's just not. They could talk all they want about, oh well, he draws coverage. Okay, how about as you just said? How about he makes a play every now and then?
Yeah,
on field. This guy that I don't know, man. Sirianni just loves this kid, and that's great. I get that he went from being a guy shouldn't have been on the team in 2020, 21, right, more 20, when they were having major maturity issues in their locker room with receivers. And we kind of laughed. I remember when they drafted Devontae Smith and they made the trade for A.J. Brown. They went from a very immature room to a super type A. Like they completely changed the room. Someone with the Eagles, I asked them at the time, I said, did you do this on purpose? You guys do this on purpose? And the guy said, look, we know we had to change the culture a little bit, but the guy said, no, that's not why we did this. We just want a great football player. All right, I get it. I get it.
It did feel like they went from preschool to grad school, though. Even though Devontae Smith was a rookie, he was, mature beyond his years. Yeah. So here's the thing, though. If Zaccheaus plays well in the slot for the next 3 games and you get some kind of production out of Julio Jones, be it red zone, whatever, situationally, you could kind of see the Eagles feeling like, all right, well, when Quez comes back, maybe he's a little bit lower on the totem pole. We'll just have to see how that works itself out. Cam Jurgens he just missed his 2nd game, so he's got 2 more to go. Being on short term, at least 2 more to go, I should say.
Yes, true.
Right, before he can be activated. So Sua Opeta will continue to fill in there, we imagine. And the big question is Lane Johnson, who has the ankle sprain, and whether or not he'll be able to make it back. What kind of vibe are you getting on Lane Johnson?
They escaped. With it, the vibe that I got was it was not good when it happened. And what is today? Wednesday, Monday night. The word we got was escaped with one here. And boy, the video, when I watched it, I didn't ask our friend Dr. Chow about it. I didn't get a chance to talk to David, but I just what we had heard early on was, oh boy, this could be bit. And thankfully it's not. Now I say that it's an ankle. And here's the thing the Eagles have to be careful about as we progress here. Driscoll's his backup. He needs work. He did not play well last week. Everybody knows that. He did not have a great training camp. He's not really been the player that he once was in the first 2 years where you go, wow, I think they're going to, boy, this guy's a really good player. Boy, they really nailed this one at that fourth rounder, right? He's got this great versatility to play guard and right tackle and left tackle if he absolutely needed to. So, okay, great. But the problem is, hasn't played as well. He didn't get, now it's not their fault that Johnson got hurt in the game, but Driscoll's not getting any work with the ones. If Lane shows up and practices today, then he's got to be the guy this week. Like you got to get Driscoll to work. He needs the work. He needs to work with the ones. He needs to get the timing back. And
yes,
you can't play this game where Lane wants to wait till Friday. Well, okay, but see, that's the thing. We don't know what he's going to do this week, if anything. We don't know. I mean, I put him more in the very questionable category, but we know how tough Lane is. If he could play, he's going to want to play, and they just got to get Driscoll reps. It's just not fair to him or to Stoutland. If Lane works a couple days this week, and then I'm good to go when he plays, and then he re-injures his ankle, you're going to ask yourself, why did he play?
Right. So if I'm Nick Sirianni, right, I'm thinking if on Wednesday I get from the medical staff or from Lane that we're not sure, we want to go, we're not sure, then I'm just giving Driscoll all the first team reps until I'm getting him prepared. Because what I can do is if Lane tells me on Friday that he's feeling really good and good to go, okay, because Lane doesn't need the reps. We've seen him play
I'm not worried about him, right?
through far more than just an ankle sprain, right?
Yeah.
Well, Lane could tell me on Sunday at 12 or 4, I don't know what time's the game, 8 o'clock, 7:50, I'm ready to go. I'm like, fine, you're in. Okay, you're right. You give Driscoll as many reps as possible. Now, if Lane comes in Wednesday and says, I'm ready to practice, I'll be fine, then you do it. But if there's any bit of the doubt, you just give Driscoll the reps.
Yeah, so we'll learn more later today, and we'll also have a really good update on Friday. We'll look into kind of what he does or doesn't do this week, if he does at all. Anything. Yeah. So that would be offense. And then
defense, man.
Defense, dude. This is I don't want to take an hour on this, but this is ridiculous. All levels of their defense. Because sports science, the Eagles have done well with it. All teams use it, by the way. I try to explain to people this when they make fun of it. You cannot completely eliminate injuries if possible, but it helps reduce the chances, the percentages. That's all you can do with sports science.
Yeah,
they're just having a lot of bad luck. Now, the good luck, knock on wood, through 6 weeks, not a lot of major injuries, but in terms of players actually dealing with injuries right now, oh my God, it's crazy.
Right. We don't have a big enough sample size. We've had a year of really good health, and now we have a year of not great health to evaluate these whole training camp practices and less time. We got to see it over a longer period of time, but all the good sort of currency earned by the less strenuous training camp and the lighter practices from last year, that can go out the window real quick if this year continues along the path that it's gone, because a lot of this stuff is soft tissue. It's not just all bones and stuff. There's a decent amount of hamstrings and muscles here and shoulder and triceps with Marlon Tuipulotu. So it's not exactly making a great compelling argument this year.
No,
we'll see.
I would disagree a little bit. Bradley Roby is a shoulder. He just got here. Eli Ricks is a knee. Gary Slay is a knee.
Yeah.
Reed Blankenship got cheap shotted, a blindside hit. You can't do that. Now, okay, Sidney Brown.
Hammy.
Yeah, soft tissue. Justin Evans' knee. These are actually ligaments or shoulder. You're talking about, it could be a bone. Who knows? They don't have to list exactly what's wrong with it.
Good point. I usually think it's like rotator cuff or labrum, which is soft tissue.
I mean,
but you're right. I don't know what the injury is.
I'm dealing with. I've had this shoulder problem from tennis. I've got this upper deltoid strain. I have to get it massaged out. I mean, I get it worked on twice a month. I mean, it's, I don't have the money to pay for what these guys get done at NovaCare,
Mm-hmm.
But it's bad luck. It's football. It is kind of amazing the luck that they've had. Plus, obviously, with good rehabs and sports science, whatever the way they do sports science, it seems to have worked. Sometimes it's going to happen. But here's another thing. Why do certain teams have bad luck? Why do the Chargers for years have bad luck? Why do the Packers have bad luck? You tell me.
No, it's a great question.
Year after year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the Giants also. I mean, they've, especially the last few years, they've been awful with their injuries.
Rams for years were great, so they brought in Ted Rapp. First year good, second year, last year, Super Bowl year. the Super Bowl hangover.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to be geniuses to figure out why the Eagles made the Super Bowl, other than they had a great roster and great coaching. Injuries.
Yeah, no,
Nothing.
it's crazy. So just to go through the names for everybody: Jalen Carter, Marlon Tuipulotu up front, ankle and triceps there. Darius Slay missed the last game with the knee injury. We'll see if he's able to get back to practice this week. Bradley Roby with the shoulder, Eli Ricks with the knee, Reed Blankenship the ribs from the blindside hit. Sidney Brown. Now Sidney Brown might be close because it seemed like he was close last week. Right? He was close. Yeah. So I would be, well, let's see, unless he had a setback, would like to think that today he'd be at least limited and hopefully full. So we'll see with him what he's able to do. And then Justin Evans. Well, here's the thing about Justin Evans, Dad. I mean, forget about sports science. I mean, this guy's been injured his entire career, so this should not be. I mean, he got injured again. Now he's on IR.
Can I ask you this question? How the hell do you play a full game and then you're out and you go on IR? Kudos to him for finishing it. I don't know what happened, and so we feel bad for Justin.
Yeah,
but it's insane. And then it's by the Slay, all the snaps he had 2 weeks ago, and I hate to do this, but I have to say it, because it happened last week. Let's hope that there's no midweek pop up like last week. Nobody knew about Slay or Evans last week coming. It was Slay and and Jalen Carter. We didn't know about that until it popped up in this report. So we don't know.
Yeah. So not what Adam is saying is, knock on wood, all the guys that we talked about, that there's not somebody else that just pops up tomorrow on the injury report from something that happened in practice or whenever. All right. Let's take a pause before we get into some other news and notes to hear from our great friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right. So the Eagles did have some workouts this week at wide receiver. You mentioned them. Desmond Patton, the Colts 6th rounder. By the way, I thought he had a good preseason that year I guess that was just last year, right? That Carson Wentz was their quarterback? No, Matt Ryan was it was 2 years ago that Carson Wentz was the Colts quarterback and Des Patman was a rookie. And this is the kid out of Washington or Washington State, right?
I think he was drafted in 2020.
Yeah. He had a pretty good preseason with them. I remember he made some decent catches too in the regular season.
Yeah, he's been kind of bouncing around working out for teams, and the Eagles have worked out a decent amount of receivers since the season started. They typically, and this season's the same, they're typically bottom 10 in player workouts and just don't, for whatever reason, they don't work a lot of players out. Like where the Patriots are usually they lead the NFL in workouts. Eagles don't work a lot of players out. Now, historically, when they're good, they don't feel the need, but you want to have your emergency list, because if you work these guys out, as we said before, you could tape the workout, so you go back to it if they want to bring the player back. You've already worked them out. It's just a matter of the player passing the physical, which Julio Jones did. So Julio Jones is here. So now today they may work them out. More players. I mean, the workouts typically are Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday's the heaviest day. Wednesday a little bit. Very little around the NFL Thursday and Friday. Saturday, like very rarely, unless this has happened already with teams. A punter or kicker gets hurt in practice. They literally, I've talked to personnel guys. They will call the agent from the field when the guy gets hurt.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we need to get your guy in here for a workout tonight. We'll fly him in right now. Pay $1,000, whatever it is.
Those guys get airlifted. It's like air Ubered right to the NovaCare.
Seriously, I've heard look. I remember when Doug Williams was running personnel, overseeing personnel for Washington many years ago. They were playing the Eagles here, and I think on Monday night, somebody got hurt, and he started calling. So he started, hey, what's your guy? What kind of? I could hear him talk. I didn't hear everything, but I heard him talk about kind of like what kind of shape is your guy in? How soon could he be ready to come in here to work out? I was like, wow, that's the way it works. Okay, interesting.
I always have this vision of a guy like on the phone with his agent. They're gonna send a car or a helicopter for you. When's it coming? Look up.
Well, but honestly, no. But honestly, if we've seen this before,
get him in there.
Yeah, you better have your emergency list ready, because with this team with Watkins, Jurgens, Lane Johnson, Carter Tuipulotu, Slade, Roby, Ricks, Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Justin Evans. And we're not even counting Maddox. I mean, there's so many key players. I understand it's a mixture of backups and starters, but it's pretty serious here with the depth is going to be tested in a major way.
It will be. Now the Dolphins come in with some injuries of their own, not nearly as many, which is probably not music to the ears of Eagles fans, but obviously some big names. I mean, it starts with Devin Achane, who I'm in a fantasy league, right?
So
with a bunch of guys who are good football fans, but they always get mad at me because every year I draft somebody I know is going to be good that they've never heard of because they're just not that into it, right? And this year was Devin Achane. I took him with my last pick.
Nice.
And man, did that work out nicely for a few weeks.
Oh, he was leading the NFL on average per carry, and
still is.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember 38 where he got hurt, but anyway, so he's on IR. He's going to be out a bit. He's got a couple more games to serve. Raheem Mostert's their starter. We'll talk Friday about this, but when we talk about the matchups. But just to give you an early preview, Raheem Mostert's their starting running back. Now, here's the thing. Yes, that's right. Who Chip found was a special teams demon. He was, and that's why he was still in the league. And then he was with McDaniel in San Francisco. But anyway, he now is a starter. He's so explosive at 32 years old with all the knee problems he's had. Well, what a great story. Good dude.
Yeah.
Geoff Wilson was their starter, but he went on injury reserve to start. He's another guy who played for McDaniel in San Francisco. He's a one-cut downhill runner, physical, tough guy with size. He's the run size back that they have on the roster. But he was designated for return last week. So he was working last week. He actually could, depending on how he looks, come off IR this week. Ron Armstead's out for a bit. Their left tackle, Connor Williams, their center, had a groin injury. He missed last week's game. So their offensive line's banged up. Defensively, this is a giant one. Actually, two big ones before we move on here. Xavier Howard, their top corner, groin injury, got hurt last week. They're not sure yet. They'll be available. Jalen Ramsey had the meniscus surgery before the season started in the summer. He wants to start working soon. They don't have an exact timetable. But the bottom line is if Xavier Howard can't play, their backups are decent. We're going to talk more about this Friday, but we're going to keep track what happens with Howard here. That is major, considering what the Dolphins have to go up against on the other side with Eagles receiver.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's sort of like what we're talking about with the Eagles. If Darius Slay can't play and they have to have Josh Jobe going up against either Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or any of these outside guys not named. Well, even James Bradbury you worry about because he don't have speed like they have speed. So he's tough,
smart. I mean, I'm putting my hands over my face here for Eagle fans. If you saw what Tyreek Hill did to them 2 years ago, here with Kansas City's last year,
man,
was it close to 200 yards?
It was, but remember, he got like 55 of it when he was matched up against Eric Wilson, a linebacker in the slot, because Gannon didn't have a dime package ready for that game.
Oh, I remember he didn't do dime. That's right. Great point. Yeah. But here's the thing. He's the best receiver. The best receivers I've seen live are Antonio Brown, Randy Moss. I'm talking game practice or games. Randy Moss. You and I saw Tyreek Hill in Miami practice.
Yeah, that was a clinic. That was incredible. That was about as close. That was like when Tom Brady came here and completed like 31 straight passes in 25 or whatever it was. Yeah.
It
was just a clinic. Just a clinic.
It was. He's so special. The Cheetah. I love watching him. And look, we'll talk to Yvonne Cosell Sunday about this, about coverages and what you would do to try to slow down Tyreek because the Eagles don't press much, if at all. I don't know how you.
I wouldn't press this guy. I would not. No. This is not the game to complain about off coverage.
But what I'm saying is, I don't know how you disrupt him.
Yeah.
But you're gonna just go straight zone, never any man, and okay. I don't know. I want to know what the best way to. We'll talk to the guys about this Sunday night and see what their thoughts are because this is seeing him. I could see it in 22 training camp with the Bucks before you and I met up at the Dolphins camp. When he ran Carlton Davis inside out, I'm like, people are seeing this. They turn him into like a pretzel. But Carlton Davis is really good.
Yeah, there's no force. No, I don't think Prime in his career could one-on-one up against someone like Tyreek Hill because I'm saying when there's no pass rush, I mean it's impossible. I mean it's just impossible.
It is. I know that's my point. I don't know. So that would worry me. We'll see what the weather. It's going to rain over the weekend. We'll have an updated forecast. We don't talk about rain, but it impacted that Cleveland Niners game greatly. The weather there, so we'll see what the weather looks like. So it's nice this week. So to close this out, because we've seen in social media people want everybody fired. Shocker. Or they want people demoted. They want this. Hurt stinks. He doesn't stink, folks. He didn't have a great game. He's not quite what he was last season. We all know that. People are going overboard. He's hero ball game. He wants to do it all on his own. Now, I think some of that stuff is true with it because he so wants to drive the ball downfield. I think that's legitimate. But he wants to be coached. He wants to be great. Stop with the hate, man. By the way, the jerk Geoff fans who came into our Inside the Birds YouTube page. What is with this stuff? We appreciate the attention. But what is this gloating for? Like, what is the Jet fans?
Did they think that we were personally hurt by the Eagles loss?
But it's ridiculous. Like the Niner fans. What is this?
I'm just glad that they feel like Inside the Birds is a safe space for them because it's
not. Now they did go after the Niner fans a couple weeks ago. The Niner and Eagle fans got into it, but I didn't. The Jet fan, because the Eagles lost and the Eagles fans were so pissed off they didn't like curse the Jet fans, so that was funny. But anyway, it is what it is.
All right, let's put a bow on that game against the Jets in a second. First, we're going to tell everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. And let's pause to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right. Look, offensively, obviously it wasn't pretty. I think we know that. I think the Jack Driscoll replacing Lane Johnson, as we mentioned in the post game, was the biggest issue because not only did it create a lot of pressure, but and here's the thing that Jalen's probably gonna have to work with the coaches on this week is that there's pressure and then there's perceived pressure. On the interception he threw, he was throwing off his back foot because he expected to get pass rushed because he was getting rushed from that side all day, but there really wasn't pressure there. So if Jack Driscoll has to start again, or no matter what, I mean, you're going up against a team in the Dolphins that's probably come at you from a little different angles. They don't have Brian Flores anymore, but they've got some guys on the edges. Yeah.
Although,
this Van Ginkel guy or whatever his name is playing with his hair on fire. So Jalen's got to make sure that he climbs and he stays there when it's there and takes those under those crossing routes, man. They're there. The shallow cross. You don't always have to go with the high in the high-low pattern.
How long have we been calling for the intermediate passing game?
And I thought he was doing a good job early in the game of getting the ball to DeAndre Swift. So he is definitely, you're right, getting the ball to the running back. But those sometimes look designed, right? Like where you're supposed to.
Hey, it's not Hurts' fault that Devontae Smith all of a sudden has stone hands.
Not at all.
Who's phenomenal. He's got maybe some of the best hands we've seen here in years, and all of a sudden he's dropped the pass wide open over the middle. What? I don't understand.
Yeah.
What? That's not like him. That's not Jalen's fault. But the intermediate pass I'm talking about, I want to get to Swift in a minute before we get out of here, which I loved. It was awesome to see that. But I'm talking about seam passes against zone coverage. That those zone beaters are tight ends down the seam.
Mm-hmm.
We saw 2 weeks ago against the Rams. It was great. Goddard did get 8 targets, but I'm looking for big plays down the middle. They need to get back because he's an athlete. I want to see that. I don't know, but look, Cosell's talking about it. Vaughn's talking about it. Filippo talked about it. Jalen's got to take what's there sometimes. And that's because he's got it in him. He wants to make the big play. He wants to make that play downfield. Because was it the Viking game? Which game was it earlier in the season? We missed Goddard a bunch of times where it clearly was there. Clearly,
Oh, that was just the game before the Jets game. That was the Washington game, was it not?
might have
Yeah.
been, but yes, but also was really egregious. I believe it was really early in the season. Might have been the Vikings.
Okay.
It was pointed out to us like the like 5 or 6 passes in the first 2
Ah,
games.
yeah,
got
yeah.
the ball, you know. But that's just look. It's tape study. We'll talk to Flip about it and see what John thinks about how he would handle it. But the Swift stuff. Look, we told you this was coming, but to the point where I'm like, is it going to happen or is it not going to happen with Swift in the past game? Boy, did it happen. He had 10 targets. That was great to see. Now, not enough explosive plays. His high was 11 yards, but I loved it. It's been coming the last couple of weeks. I don't know what the hell happened in week 1. That was ridiculous why he didn't get the ball. But he's special in the pass game, and I would expect this to happen. And for those of you who didn't think they check it down to him, we need to reevaluate the way we look at that because they're doing it. It's some of it's designed, some of it's not. Like Hurts is finding him. That's remember how much we would scratch our head with him and not getting the ball last year, but now Swift is, and that's a great sign.
So in the post-game show, we mentioned that we saw something new from Brian Johnson and the Eagles offensive staff that we had not seen before, and that was the pony package, which was pretty effective when they used it. Actually, Boston Scott had a couple of nice gains on it. We also saw something on defense that as the first time I've seen it, maybe quite a while or ever under this regime, and that's when the Jets came out in 12 or 13 personnel. And yes, there were times the Jets came out in 13 personnel. That's how concerned they were with the Eagles front. The Eagles responded with 6-man fronts that included 4 defensive tackles. They literally had 4 defensive tackles on the field. They would have 4 defensive linemen, Cox, Williams, Jordan Davis. Oh no, it was 4 defensive tackles and somebody else, right?
No, they started the game.
Yeah, there was a couple of times.
Well,
who am I missing?
First time ever they've done this. In fact, I don't remember them. I know they did. They started every game with at least 3 defensive tackles last year. How about this one? First time they've done it this year was Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, and Catavia Street.
Right, Catavia Street. That's who I was missing.
Yeah.
And then they still had Sweat and Reddick on the field. So they had 4 D tackles, 1 defensive end, and an overhang player.
That was the size really good. I'll be honest with you, folks. I've talked to a lot of coaches to work with them. They all speak well of him. Like the guy, he's smart. That doesn't guarantee you anything in this league. Trust me, a lot of smart coaches aren't very good. He's very creative. He's being asked to do a lot of different stuff to make up for injuries in the back end. They've got the great thing is he's beginning a lot of front to work with, which is awesome. Kobe Dean, who we wanted to coach, Dean missed his time. We as we reported in the pregame show, Morrow was going to start. He did, but you made a good point. Just don't assume that Morrow is going to take all the snaps. He didn't. They had a rotation between Dean. I think this is what you brought up. Do you know what situationally how they did it? Because you brought this up without even knowing. You just said, "Hey, it could be situational." It definitely was. But do we know what the situations were with Morrow and Dean in that game?
I don't think it was down and distance situational. I think it was time, snap, pitch count.
Just rotation time by time rotation. Okay.
That's what I believe. I can probably look into it a little bit deeper. Sometimes I'm not when you're watching the tape, you're not always like, oh, this guy's into that. But that's what it seemed like to me. Yeah.
And he said he was told earlier in the week that I guess he told the media after the game, as I saw the quotes, that he was told earlier in the week they were going to go with this. Now, what he thinks is because he had been out for a bit. So maybe he gets his job. I mean, he's got to get it back. He's the future at that position. I just wonder if he's a primary backer inside Mike linebacker. Like, do they have a rotation, or they just let him have all the snaps or most of them? We'll see. We don't know that yet. But I just thought that was so creative. And I know Cosell Greg has said on our pregame show how much he appreciates the way that they're mixing and matching. And by the way, Reddick looks awesome.
Yes.
Someone told me that the tape, I guess the cast really inhibited his ability for a leverage standpoint. He was absolutely maybe mentally impacted, but because he couldn't grab, reach the guy's shoulder, whatever he used for leverage. But man, he looks damn good.
It was, let's be honest, it was a matter of time. I mean, yeah, the cast comes off and 0 sacks through the first, 3 games, just didn't. And now he's got 5.5 leading the team. He's like 6th in the league already. I mean, he's been on a tear. I know. Crazy, right?
He's awesome. What a signing.
It really has been one of their best signings. Let's finish this off with this. I have one final point before we get out of here.
Sure.
I think there's a whole lot of like panic about this Miami Dolphins game. Yes, because of the injuries, but also because of the way the Dolphins are winning. I don't see it that way. To me, the Dolphins only scored 20 points against the Bills. They lost to a team that had a good pass rush. That was the Bills. Bills sacked them a bunch of times in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Slow down their offense. It's a night game. It's in Philly. It's going to be cold. Not that hot South Florida fast track that they're used to. It's at the link. I just think that the Eagles can win this game, and it's not going to be like the biggest stretch in the world to say the Eagles are going to win this game. I haven't even looked at the line. So you mentioned that they'll probably be favorites. So maybe they are
1.5. Yeah. They're
1.5. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not as scared as like the Eagles are going to get ransacked here by or they're walking into a buzzsaw. I think if they get a few of these guys back on defense, especially up front where they've dominated everybody this year, that's an offensive line that the Eagles can dominate.
Oh, yes. Now, two things before we get out of here.
Mhm.
Right now, rain on Saturday, Sunday, partly cloudy, high of 60. But the winds now, we don't have the.
Yeah, but it won't be 60 at 8 o'clock, right? It'll probably be in
Right,
the 50s.
But here's the big thing. Winds 15 to 25 mile an hour.
Mm.
So we'll see if it changes. But over 20 miles an hour can impact passing. But the word on Tua is very simple. From a former player I met on my training camp tour told me, now I'm going to use this just to give you a little hint, who's involved in the broadcasting business. He told me not to use his name, so I'm not going to do that. But he said he's studying Tua. When he does not get his first read and a half, he's in trouble. That's when he stands like back there like a statue. He's a lefty. And he doesn't see it real well. He doesn't process real well. But if he gets his first look clean, it's out quickly and he defeats the pass rush.
Mm.
It doesn't matter that he's built his body up. Yeah, I mean it'll help him when he gets thrown to the ground, but that's not going to save him. They got to take those looks away. That's the only chance the Eagles have to win this game, is to make him hold on to it. And then as you just said, and you're 100% right, the line is not very good. A quick decision-making quarterback makes any offensive line very good. You talk to anyone who worked for the Colts when Peyton Manning was there, other than Jeff Saturday, not very talented on the offensive line. He made their offensive line way better than it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you process better, you get it out quickly, they're going to be better.
All right. So I look forward to breaking it down again Sunday, 5 p.m. Well, we also have our Friday podcast that we'll be doing too. But Friday podcast, we'll break it down the game. And then Sunday at Fringe Bar in Philadelphia, 140 Columbus Boulevard, Delaware Ave, whatever you want to call it, tomato, you know where it is, up there on the waterfront. And I'm going to put it out there right now. Anybody who comes to Fringe Bar to watch our show and says, I am here to watch Inside the Birds pregame live, I'm going to buy him a drink. All right, that's it. I just came up with that myself. I'm buying you a drink. You come watch our show, I'm going to buy you you got a drink on me.
You know what? I'm doing it. You know what? Here's the deal. Okay, I'll match you up to $200.
Okay.
So
sounds good to me.
$8 drink specials. I will have my credit card handy. If you show up, the first people to tell us we're buying drinks.
There it
great
is.
idea, by the way. We love meeting people. It's really cool with Patreon, but live we want to meet people.
Yeah.
And hopefully we see people on Sunday night.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds.